Welcome to week 4, lecture 1, part 1. We're going to be discussing section 3.3 here in this lesson, and this is the one on truth functional equivalence. So remember before we had this intuitive notion of logical equivalence. Excuse me. And what we're going to do here is give a notion of logical equivalence using our truth tables. So we already have this sort of informal idea of when two sentences are logically equivalent. And now we're going to show that some of those sentences that we talked about before actually are also truth functionally equivalent. So let's give out the definition of logical equivalence first, and then we'll go over a few examples. So we say that sentences, remember we're going to be using meta variables here, so sentences P and Q. So remember, these are not sentences of SL in the sense that Q is a sentence of SL. Rather, Q is a meta variable where you can replace it with any given sentence of SL. But Q itself, the boldface Q, is not a sentence of SL. Okay, so sentences P and Q, so remember we're using these, so we're specifying some particular sentence of SL, are truth functionally equivalent if and only if on every truth value assignment, P and Q agree. Okay, so what we mean here is, imagine we have a truth table for a sentence such as, we'll have the sentence A or not A. And suppose we have another sentence, actually let's do a different one, A or not B. And suppose we have another sentence that says not A and B. So suppose we have these two sentences here, and we say that these two sentences will be truth functionally equivalent if and only if, on every possible truth value assignment, both of these sentences agree with one another. So let's do a quick test to see if that's the case. So we're going to build our truth table as we usually do. So we first write down the atomic sentences, and then let's make a little bit of space here. Maybe that's a little bit too far. Let's bring that back in. Okay, and I will move that one over. Okay, and so I guess, yeah, I should be specific here. I'm not putting a bracket around A and B. Right, so you can imagine that there's parentheses here, and this parentheses is right there. Okay, and so we have our four possible combinations of truth value assignments. We have the case when both A and B are true. We also have it when A is true but B is false. Another scenario is where A is false and B is true. And lastly, the last possible truth value assignment is when both of them are false. Okay, so this time I'm not going to be repeating the truth values for each of the atomic sentences in here, because that's redundant, and hopefully by now you've gotten the hang of how to do this. So I'm going to skip straight ahead into the case where negation here is operating on B. And in this scenario we said B is true, so negation is false. And let's skip over and do the other sentence right away as well. I'm just going to put this vertical bar here to just separate the fact that we're evaluating this sentence, and now we're going to evaluate this sentence. Okay. So not A here is also going to get false. And we can actually go ahead and just evaluate this whole row right away. So if we come back here, we have not A, B is false. And then we want to find out what the truth value assignment is, or the truth value is for A or B, given that not B is false. So we take the disjunction, and we say that a disjunction is true, just in the case when at least one of the disjuncts is true, and in this case, A over here is true. So we can just put T for the disjunction. Okay, so the sentence A or not B is true on this truth value assignment. And let's go over here and we'll finish this one. Remember, with conjunction, we said that both of the conjuncts need to be true. So here, since not A is false, we would have to assign false to this. So before we even finish the rest of the table, one of the things we can say already is that these two sentences will not be truth functionally equivalent. Why? Well, because here's a truth value assignment. You make A true and you make B true, and then you evaluate the first sentence to get true on this truth value assignment, and then you get this sentence to be false on this truth value assignment, so they're actually disagreeing. So this sentence is true for a particular scenario, and this sentence is true for a particular scenario, where in this case we're talking about this truth value assignment, right? So before we loosely talked about scenarios or possible worlds or different kinds of cases, or these are all sort of loose terminology that we were using. Now we're going to be talking about truth value assignments, and that means this particular row right here, right? The instance where we assign true to A and we also assign true to B. Okay, so that means I don't even have to finish the rest of this, the rest of this truth table, because I already know that they're not going to be truth functionally equivalent. But let's change this up a little bit, and let's do this. So suppose instead of having the negation inside the parentheses, suppose I did, I had it outside. We do it like this. Okay, and now let's have a look. So now we have two different sentences, right? This one says A or not B, and the second sentence says it's not the case that not A and B. So as before, we assign false to not B here, and we can assign true to the disjunction because at least one of them is true, namely A. And then if we work here on this sentence, we have not A, that gets false because A is true on this truth value assignment right here. We know the conjunction is false because at least one of them is false, and the conjunction says that both conjuncts have to be true. So that gives us false for this entire thing. But of course, the negation out in front looks inside at the main connective, which is the conjunction, and we assign false to the conjunction, so the negation then assigns this as a truth value. The truth value is true. So now these two sentences agree at least on this truth value assignment. But if they're going to be truth functionally equivalent, then they need to agree on every possible truth value assignment. So let's keep going to the next row. So, oh, sorry. Okay, so here, not B gets true because B is false on this truth value assignment. And then we go to the next next innermost connective, and that is the disjunction, and this gets assigned true because here we have at least one of the disjuncts is true. And in this case, both A is true and not B is true in this case. Okay, and let's come over here. Excuse me, I'm feeling a little under weather, so that's why I'm a little sniffly. Okay, so there. So not A again here gets assigned false because on this truth value assignment, A is true. And the conjunction then turns out to be false as well, for the same reason as above, right? Because both conjuncts have to be true, but here we have a conjunct that is false. And that means that the negation out here looks at the innermost it looks at the next main connective, and it's false. So it reverses that and then assigns true. And so again, here these sentences agree on this truth value assignment. So let's keep going down, and we'll do it for this sentence again. Here, not B gets assigned false, because on this truth value assignment, B is taken to be true. And that means that the disjunction here is also false, right? Because the right disjunct is false, and under this truth value assignment, A is also false. So the whole sentence comes out false on this truth value assignment right here. So let's look at the second sentence. Well, we get it that not A is assigned true because we have A on this truth value assignment given to be false. That means the conjunction is true because B is true on this truth value assignment. So the conjunction gets true. But the negation looks at conjunction and sees that it gets assigned true. So it assigns to the sentence false. Okay, so on this truth value assignment, these two sentences also agree right here. And so we just have one more row to look at. And this last one now, B gets assigned true. Not B gets assigned true because B on this truth value assignment is false. That means the disjunction is, that means the disjunction is true because at least one of the disjuncts is true. So on this truth value assignment, this sentence gets assigned true. And now we just need to consider this last case. So here, not A gets assigned true because on this truth value assignment, A is false. So not A gets assigned true. That means the conjunction gets assigned false because B on this truth value assignment is false, and the conjunction says that both conjuncts have to be true. And then negation looks at the main connective, and negation looks at the main connective of the inner statement, which is conjunction. It's false. It reverses that, so it assigns true to the sentence, and that's exactly what we had over here. So these two sentences, A or not B, and the sentence not A and B, are truth functionally true. Truth functionally equivalent. Right, that's really important. They are truth functionally equivalent, these two sentences. Why? Well, because on every truth value assignment, they agree, right? So if you look over here, this sentence got true, and if we look over here, the sentence got true on the same truth value assignment. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about truth functional